We're going to talk today about what we can expect from CitizenCon. I'll put a video out about this, probably not until after they put out their schedule. For all I know, this might not even come out until after they put out their schedule, which will be very awkward, but also kind of redeeming if we got a lot of things right. So we'll see. And we will basically be going through the last year of Star Citizen, looking at the different things they've talked about, the different messages they've sent, some of the monthly reports, and all that different jazz to try and determine what we will see at CitizenCon. Now, I know for a fact this stream is going to be riddled with jokes and chat about, oh, we're going to see the same thing. Oh, we're going to see more lies. Whatever. I mean, whatever. Get over it. We're going to we're going to speculate, and we're going to make some jokes in the meantime, but please do not dwell on the fact that not everything from the last CitizenCon is in the game. For anybody who's been here longer than 2 years, that's never been the norm or an expectation, and I really freaking wish they would start to change it so it was. But we're still trying to get there. Today, we will likely be touching on things like base building, the StarSim, Planet Tech V5, new rendering practices like ray tracing, and I had a couple other things written down, but we'll leave those as surprises. I've got some decent guesses, but I also am hoping you guys can come in clutch and remind me of the various times throughout the year when they've actually just laid out the teaser that, oh, come back for CitizenCon to learn more about that. I know there was one in like the recent Star Citizen Live or Inside Star Citizen. So this is just going to be like a summarized stream with a whole bunch of discussion, as we do. We're great at it. We're wonderful at it. We talk far too much. A summarized stream, a deep dive into what might be coming. How about we start this off with Planet Tech and new system stuff? Let's jump all the way back in time to the first Nyx preview we ever saw to show people kind of what we're expecting with Nyx, and then I'll show you guys Delamar. Here's a look at the at Nyx, what they wanted Nyx to originally be via their visual trailer, and then we're going to look at what it ended up being, and then, you know, extrapolate. So will we see Nyx at CitizenCon? All right. So that was the original sort of, hey, this is Nyx. Look at this. It was actually just Delamar. Excuse me. Sorry. Puberty and stuff. We go to the ARC star map. We can check out what the overall system looks like, because that was just the landing zone. Now, we all know landing zones mainly as cities right now. ArcCorp has Area 18, Microtech New Babbage, Crusader Orison, and Hurston Lorville. The landing zone in Nyx is actually just an asteroid. That's why you saw a bunch of floating rocks in the air. That wasn't a planet. It's a large asteroid that's big enough to have its own sort of moon-like gravity. It has no atmosphere, and it sits in an asteroid belt. So it's an unclaimed system. That means that it's not going to be as seriously guarded as something like Terra or even Stanton. This is going to be a neutral ground, kind of. I think this will probably be a mid to late game neutral zone. Like, it's not as dangerous as Pyro, not as safe as Stanton. Pretty big system. It's only got 3 planets in it. The place that you just saw is right here in the asteroid belt. So it's one large asteroid called Delamar. And it has that one landing zone on it, like I said, called Levski. And this is equivalent to the cities in Stanton, but obviously it's not as big as a city. So that's where most of the work is going to be for Nyx. If they were going to make this star system, most of the work that they would have to put into it would be at Delamar in the Levski landing zone. And then obviously they also have to model Nyx 3, 2, and 1, as well as these asteroid belts. Now, we've seen that they are adding more and more locations to asteroid belts. They're adding asteroid bases. They're adding derelict ships. They're adding sometimes abandoned space stations. Most of those things will be included in this system, I imagine, just to give us some things to do and find. This star system is also developed inside of a nebula, right on the edge of a nebula. So there's going to be a large amount of difficult space to travel within this system, most likely. It will be, it'll have more kind of interference and probably play off of the mechanics that they used for the coil in Squadron 42. And if you go back to CitizenCon, man, I don't know what the name of the panel is where they did this stuff. One of the CitizenCons, though, they talked pretty heavily about the effects they came up with for the coil and flying through it. And yeah, I'm not going to find it here. But I do think that the idea of exploration gameplay and long distance scanning and stuff like that is something that they could definitely benefit from bringing this system in. Now, I saw jokes about the video saying coming soon. Yes, it said coming soon, and this video was released in 2015, but it did end up coming soon. I mean, ish. So they released this in August of 2015. We actually were able to visit this location ourselves in December of 2017, was it? Or just 2018? I don't remember. A few years later. And if you just search Star Citizen, I guess not Nyx, you'd have to search like Delamar. You'll find plenty of videos of this area. Here's our man Ferrister.
Depending on when you're watching,
the Attenborough Star Citizen 2017
right may not still be here. This is Levski on Delamar, currently in the Stanton system, and this is Star Citizen, a game which, despite being in alpha testing and despite the controversy it draws, can be incredibly detailed and immersive. And this location spotlight series of videos is to celebrate that beauty. I'm Fat.
Great channel.
And this video will be a location spotlight on Levski in Star Citizen.
Go check them out if you haven't.
Aside from the scattered beauty.
Literally, actually just had a podcast with Ferrister released today about the engineering gameplay. But in this video, he probably goes over this whole area
huge gaping
from the
from old mining activities.
Exterior
2655
to the interior.
The old mining location became.
It was a whole place. This was like one of the first. This was the first place, I believe, that we could land and actually go and spawn stuff. So that was a big deal, and the significance of that is obviously, as we were just saying, this location is most of the work that they're going to have for Delamar, right? The landing zone. Just like the landing zones in Stanton are most of that work. So they have it finished. I wouldn't say it's probably not up to date to the standards that they have for the locations right now, but they have already said in the monthly reports just this past year that as they've been updating the game, they've also been updating Levski in the background with hospitals. Actually, I probably have that picture saved somewhere. Hospitals, the resource network, the graphical updates, all that kind of stuff in Levski is also getting updated while they're building out Pyro and updating Stanton. So as far as a new system goes, Nyx would be a new area. Right now, you don't know what Nyx can bring. So for starters, it would be new space, like how Pyro is bringing in asteroid bases and let's see, they're bringing in asteroid bases, they're bringing in new outposts, they're bringing in new factions that would give new missions with new rewards. You'd probably have new resources that you could find in that system that you wouldn't find in others. You would probably have different kind of relics. So in the Stanton system, you get, they have some of these relics that show up from past wars that you could find and collect. That's kind of exploration gameplay more so. But those kinds of things they can mix into this system because this system was a big part of the Beltway that people actually used to escape the authoritarian Messer regime. So back before this game happened in the Star Citizen universe, the Nyx system was a popular place to stop off if you were trying to escape the government that was controlling humanity at the time. I can see them adding a whole bunch of, assets and collectibles and harvestables that have to do with that. There's also the People's Alliance of Nyx. I think it's of Nyx. Is it Nyx? People's Alliance of somebody. It's a neutral faction that's not really a big fan of UEE, but also not pirates. So that provides a lot of opportunity for players who maybe don't want to be in a UEE system where it's all government and it's all cities all the time, but they also don't want to be in Pyro where it's kind of more dangerous and tends to attract people who are more violent. This would be a solid neutral ground in between the two systems that they could bring in. But yeah, the biggest things that they would add with this would be the factions, the points of interest, and the new missions. I think there's a lot they could do with resources, but since we haven't even seen them do that with Pyro yet, I wouldn't bank on that as of just yet. Will we see hacking at CitizenCon? I think we can say a resounding yes. What would it be? What would it be? Shipping out. In fact, I think hacking probably goes on a decent list of different topics we would see at CitizenCon, different features that we haven't seen yet. But this is the biggest clue as to why would we see hacking this year.
In just the first 6 months of 2024, we feel pretty confident in targeting everything that we just shared for the Pyro system in Alpha 4.0. Well, that's where the new preview channel comes into play.
Wait for it.
Now that said, Alpha 4.0 is currently targeting a summer 2024 release.
Ouch.
But that won't mean that you have to wait until...
It's like the last day of summer today, right? What's the last day of summer? September 22nd. Yesterday. We missed that goal yesterday.
then to play it or learn more about it. That's because in 2024, we'll continue doing play tests like the one we just completed, and you'll be able to follow along with its development firsthand on the preview channel.
Wait for it.
That's the planets, moons, space stations, settlements, and outlaw lifestyle that comes within the Pyro system, but also an entire host of additional new features, content, and quality of life improvements like, fully functional jump points, the new quantum travel system, new vehicle HUD and MFD work, resource management, hacking.
There it is. Hacking. Hacking was supposed to be on the preview channel this year. Who played it? That one gets me. It gets me a lot. They've been working on it for a long time. Oh my god. I could probably find let's see. We could probably do a Star Citizen a blind Star Citizen monthly report search and just look for the term hacking and see if it shows up. No, these would be too new. It would have to be like a 2021 search. That. Here we go. Look at this. Star Citizen monthly report, November-December 2021. Throughout the year, work on the hacking minigame continued. It has gone through multiple iterations, with each prototype being playtested internally using a simplified 2D in-game representation. It has since evolved to be more competitive, tying into some of the in-world gameplay mechanics like scanning. As the core layout of the minigame has remained fairly stable throughout multiple prototypes, work began on bringing the visuals online. The concepts for this saw multiple iterations, which it currently is looking like the player is executing scripts to programmatically attack the target system. The interface, as it currently stands, will offer the user different options to input the various commands. You know what that sounds like to me? It sounds like Mass Effect 3 hacking. I think that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, this one. Where you would like scroll through the different blocks of text and you'd have to find the one that matches the one up here. It sounds kind of similar. But what I'm getting from this is basically you get access to a system, whether that's climate control or security or whatever it is. And the system, your goal is to make the system recognize you as the verified administrator. Basically what we do in Security Post Korea. And so they'll have like little commands that you can click to put in to get through a system and like work your way in. The thing is, this is 3 years ago. Where are we? What's going on? I think this was held back by Squadron. You know, same old, same old. This is probably some gameplay that they got working for Squadron 42. It works in very specific situations for Squadron 42. Bespoke, if you will. That's going on the bingo card for sure. And for Star Citizen, it takes way more work because it has to factor into the way that different ships work. It has to work at landing zones. It has to work at outposts. It has to work at security posts. It has to work in space stations. And all of those have to actually systemically work with other players possible of affecting it. So I think they're pretty close with hacking. I'm assuming they have something working for Squadron. They must have something working for Squadron if it's in polishing, right? And so they did think that they'd be able to get it out in this year in the preview channel. And I'm betting that's because if 4.0 actually was coming out comfortably this year, it might come out at the end of this year, it might not. If it was happening in a comfortable manner though, I bet you the preview channel would have been used a lot more for this kind of stuff. We would have seen a lot more experimentation and things just happening on that channel. I think that a lot of the year's progress gets thrown into chaos when they start falling behind on the big deliverable, that being 4.0. And I think it ends up pulling people back to doing things that they were not planning on doing. You know, like in any project that you've ever been a part of, things fall through and then it ends up slowing down the rest of the work. The thing is, CIG does not seem to do a good job of anticipating that and sharing it. Like, I feel like maybe they don't share with us their best case scenarios, but they share with us good case scenarios, and they should just share with us really bad ones, you know? Like, if you think 4.0 is coming out in May, tell us it might make it by the end of the year. Yeah? If you think hacking might show up in the progress in the preview channel throughout the year, don't even mention it. Let it be a surprise. I really wish that was the way that it went. I think hacking is lost in Squadron 42 limbo, along with so many other features, and who knows when we'll see it in the game, at least. I do think that we will be seeing it at CitizenCon. Put that one down on the list. It's supposed to be a mini game. Yeah. I mean, mini game, I think, in the same sense that like refueling is a mini game. I don't think it's gonna. Well, you know, I don't even. I would assume it's as mini game-ish as mining is. You kind of just step into it and do it, and then step out. Not like it sucks you away from the rest of the game in some way. Thought you remember Disco at some point saying that hacking got a major revamp. Yeah, so what I just read was after the major revamp, I believe. Originally, so you guys remember what I just said about hacking. It's supposed to be putting in commands to go through a 2D sort of text kind of thing, command prompt. This is what it was supposed to look like at first. I think I have some video for this actually. Well, I have the video that they show this preview in. It was originally going to be a kind of 3D Deus Ex almost looking hacking gameplay. Looked like Deus Ex, a little bit like a 3D Pac-Man kind of thing where you would be chased around by antivirus almost, and you'd have to make it to some final destination somewhere in this like map thing. But I think they're going for something that's a little bit more grounded. Where's my list? Here we go. All right. Hacking, 100%. We're going to see that. Nix, I'll say that's like a... It's like 80%. Pretty sure we're going to see that. I mean, no. Nix is going to be 100%. It's got to be, right? Let's say 95. 950? No, we'll say 95% Nix. Missions, or rather, improved player beacons. I don't know what this would actually be. This could be player missions. Who knows how it shows up? But this could be a very good win for them. I'm going to put this one at like 50% though, because I really don't think we would see it. It's super important. They have... Man, if you even go back to what they said about refueling, back in the day. I'm talking back in the day. Listen to this.
Because you have to fly and find a guy in need, find a guy that has run out of fuel, didn't check his fuel meter, and made a bit of a mistake. We are foreseeing this will be much more of a problem once Pyro kicks in, because refueling opportunities there at the station are really minimal. So this will come into play a lot more. So
okay, so that's putting it pretty plainly, right? This is something that's going to be much more important when Pyro comes in, and honestly, it'd be a great reason to start getting more industrial players in Pyro. You know, if you know that you're going to make really good money refueling people in Pyro, you go there, you sit around, wait for beacons to come in, you refuel the people, and you bring an escort with you. That's gameplay for the refuelers, gameplay for the escorts, gameplay for your boy the engineer in chat who wants to just like keep the ship running, gameplay for the pirates who are looking for more fuel to steal. This is the stuff that makes Pyro matter, and we haven't seen anything about this kind of thing becoming better. Even now, when you need to refuel in game, you have to put out a message in global chat. Who the f is gonna do that? Who's going into Star Citizen of all games, and just post it to the whole server? Hey guys, I'm out of fuel. I don't really know what to do. I don't have any friends to message, so I'm just gonna reach out to you guys. Somebody come give me some fuel. Here's my location. Come be nice. Like, that sounds like a great way to get some good entertainment. You know, you could probably set up a nice ambush and have some fun with it. But if you're just like a player looking to refuel, imagine telling somebody, hey, yeah, by the way, if you run out of fuel, just type it in global chat. You'll figure it out. You're in Pyro, not a problem. They look out for their own. Just use some pirate lingo, like ahoy and matey, and you'll be good. So I don't know what's going on with refueling, but I do think that these beacons and the ability to share missions in general is something that they really got to get going. Now they did talk about this briefly in a Star Citizen Live. Let's listen to what they say, though, about these beacons, if this is something that maybe we'll hear about at CitizenCon.
Will players ever be able to set up contracts to have cargo or items hauled by other players?
So, we do have player beacons. And I know what that current state of that is, but that is
it, Nick?
a system.
What is the current state? Go ahead, admit it.
Works perfectly.
It's a feature, but that's something which we. It's like the economy. It's
non-existent. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Carry on, Nick.
Okay.
You know, this is pre-recorded, and if that still makes it into the show, know that I don't value my job. That'll probably still be in the show. I mean, it's just look. We're just going to leave that in because I've said it before. We have the same conversations you do. The same exact things you guys talk about, the same concerns that you have. We say all the same things, just 12 weeks before you do. We recognize that some of these systems.
Oh yeah, ooga blaga balugulu. You think they said that 12 weeks ago? I bet not. CIG are liars. You didn't say that.
Still have work to do. Still need love. I'm going to ask Elliot about box missions, so don't you worry. So don't take our candor about it as us not caring about it or us not thinking it's important. It's just there's a very long list of things that we're doing for Star Citizen that
they might have said that. You're right.
Have to fix, and we're just.
They usually send the tickets out like right before. They're digital tickets, so you don't have to worry about them actually getting to you.
You just have to kind of go, yeah. We know.
If we don't, we'd all be depressed, right?
Yep.
Gotta have fun to make fun.
So just take it as us being like you. And we understand it. We're aware of it. It's on the list. And just all we can ask for is patience while we try to get to everything. All right. Continue with whatever we were talking about. I've forgotten now. Player concepts.
So to answer the question, Elliot, the beacon system is something which provides for players to contract other players, and it's a system we will be looking to expand upon in the future. And personally, I think that this side of
so there's no he didn't even say in the near future. He didn't even say we're working on it. He just said in the future. So this is probably not something to see, something to expect.
Is fundamental, given that we are having a hybrid economy. So player-driven.
Yeah, that's Space Tomato. Clip it. Fundamentally said.
Yes.
I did clip it, by the way. I did. I got you.
Yeah, it really is. I don't think. I've been, like I said, I'm going on 10 years here now. I've had 100 conversations with Tony and with everybody else who's involved with this stuff, and I cannot overstate how important the player-driven aspect of our economy is to us. It's just things like the player beacon system and stuff. It's just waiting for the eye of development, Sauron, to turn its eye back to it. Resources to free up, new technologies to work on. A lot of this stuff, it's like you don't want to put in a whole bunch of work when you know this other work that you also have to do is going to invalidate that. So we're forced to kind of sit there and grin and bear certain aspects of this while we're waiting for other new technologies and other new works to come online. But it is. Fundamentals are a really good word for that, Nick. Thank you. All right,
but when?
We'll follow that up with dynamic mission generation.
Nah, man. When question, when do we get it? So, not really saying anything about the idea of player beacons coming better. Even more importantly, we need more custom comms or org management. So that's another thing. Let's see. Let me think. Let's open up our handy dandy handy dandy StarChives. Thank you to the great StarChives developer. This is a great tool. Let's see if we can find that mention they had earlier this year. Oh God, no. Okay, so org StarChives not picking it up. One last try. I know it was a Star Citizen Live around like May or April. No, it's not picking it up. I think it was here, perhaps.
Have that be part of the game loop.
Let's see. What is a no-go process? Bed logging. Currently, it's very hard to be a bad guy. Place for solo players. This was a very quick mention. I don't think. Anybody remember what video that was? Economy update. Will there be a wipe? Master mode performance. 18. Pretty sure it was a question, and they was just like, "Yep, we want to look into that." No, somebody definitely said keep an eye out for later this year, and I don't remember who it was or where it was. All right, last ditch effort. Star Citizen organization tool. Reddit. Remember the mention, but don't remember where it was. Might have been when they were talking to the UI folks. Actually, I think that was it. Let's see. It would add filters, share locations. Ooh, let's see what they have to say about that.
Will we be able to share the locations that we save from the star map with other players?
Yeah, for sure. That's part of the vision again. So you should be able to share so we can see in 323 you can place the markers on the area map, and in the future you should be able to place them on the star map, and those should be the same kind of thing. You have a list of all your markers that you placed, and you should be able to share them with your party and so on. But it will, as I just said, we will need to look into the tech of it and see how that actually works out.
And then last of the, oh, no, that's Bone. See, playing with the toys.
I don't.
Will we be able to set
here we go. This is it.
MobiGlas.
I think this is it.
What other MobiGlas apps can we look forward to? Any hints of integration with something like Spectrum?
So for the MobiGlas, if you've seen the new one anyway, there's some apps that we obviously didn't update. So for the future, we will have that. The comms app will be replaced by something helping you do your org stuff instead.
There it is.
So that will be playing into a lot of social things, and we'll be updating. Knickknacks will also get.
I love the little look, the side eye look from Jared.
We'll be updating. Knickknacks will also get. Well, it will essentially be.
Okay,
the
full statement.
Comms app will be so. For the future, we will have that. The comms app will be replaced by something helping you do your org stuff instead, maybe. So that will be playing into a lot of social things, and we'll be updating. Knickknacks will also get. Well, it will essentially be replaced.
Good.
By a new app.
Knickknacks pisses me off, man. I have this app that's supposed to help me find anything that I need in the verse, but I can't search for those things. So you just have to click through to the bottom of every inventory in the whole star system to see if the things that you want are there. That's
sometime in the future, but it's going to be a better user experience to keep track of all of your things. Oh. Jared is gonna beat me up now.
You said org stuff.
Yeah.
What org stuff?
Yeah, what org stuff?
All the secrets.
What org stuff, Gabriel?
Tell us anything. Anything at all.
Say anything.
Put him in a headlock.
That's all we want, man.
You can put a cover over the camera right now.
So long. It was
Threaten
like
him.
CitizenCon 2013 when we introduced org stuff. It's still not in game.
Well, you heard it here first.
What did I hear? Tell us.
We heard it here for the 10th time.
Orgs. You're gonna have a dedicated app to do all your org communications, and well, there's a lot of things that we have grand plans for, but yeah, I don't want to say more.
They've got the concept of a plan.
More than that at this point.
This isn't the place we're gonna share them, but
where,
folks?
Where?
You've been patient, I know. Just a little while longer. I'm not even gonna say a little while longer. Just some point, some indeterminate amount of time longer.
Okay. So.
All right.
He never actually says at CitizenCon. I was really hoping he would at least say something like, "Oh, at an event later this year," then we would at least be able to know that there is going to be some news about orgs at CitizenCon, but we can't. I wouldn't depend on that. So let's go into the big bad list and say org app 15%. I like that. It's a nice round. It's not a round number, but kind of round. 3 times 5, right? Was it this one when he was like, "Wait until the big event," and I was like, "It's Halloween." Anybody remember what part of this Star Citizen live that was on? I think it was here.
Second part and the third part and the fourth part, and when you get the second part and the third part and fourth part, that first part will make more sense. And we try to explain that, but when you play the game and you see 1/4 of an experience, you're right when you say this
I don't even need 4.0 anymore. I can just control F the transcript. What the f***?
doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, because it's 1/4 of this overall thing. And when you see things like the persistent hangers now, and where we're going with item placement and the item banks and all this stuff like that, this is still just sections of this thing that we'll continue to build out later and later. And you could expect to hear more about that at a big event that's coming up in a few weeks. How many weeks? Don't tell me.
So specifically, he's saying things that have to do with the item bank and
with item placement and the item banks and all this stuff like that. This is still just sections of this.
This sounds like base building talk, to be honest. I think building interiors are probably the next version of the next version of the instancing technology that they're using for our hangars. So they just brought in persistent hangars, personal hangars, all the hangars. They are instanced. We all know this because we have heard the alarms blaring for other people's hangars that we can't see. We've seen the doors not open when we're there. All those things. But there are another type of instance thing that I think they want to do. Well, we all know they want to do. And I'm not sure if their plan is still the same here. Okay, I've heard some whispers and some murmurs that this specific development and the overall area this development falls inside of has been having trouble over the last couple of years. There are a lot of complications that go on when it comes to, how the game develops and what teams are working on what. And I think this is a very, very big initiative that would bump up against things like UGFs and base building and outposts, that when push comes to shove, this probably gets the short end of the stick and gets pushed back more or gets downgraded into something a little different. So going into this video we're about to watch, keep that in mind. When we see this, it might not be the exact same of what they're trying to tell us here, but I do think that this is one of the next steps for their instancing that helps to make cities have a lot more gameplay and helps to make buildings have more spaces within them where we can do stuff that's not just an outpost or something like that. If they instance them, it could really help along with providing gameplay without taking up a lot more resources in the PU, but we'll have to see.
So building interiors is something we've always wanted to do, because of, we've had cities in the game for a while. We have many cities, we have many buildings. Therefore, we could have many interiors. It's a perfect opportunity to put in a lot of play space. Now, with the players flying around these buildings, they've been largely urban landscapes, fairly uninteractable. We've done a few landing pads to get the players in and out there, but really the real good stuff was on the inside. So up until now, we've been on the outside wondering about the inside, and today we're going to talk about the inside, looking outside. All right, so we're building interiors. The way in which we approach the concept development, now this was just a pure blue sky ideation phase, and the idea was to create inspirational material. So when we're talking about building interiors, how could we start to break that down? So right off the bat on the top, it's the rooftop spaces. So these would be the primary access points for the player. Then just below that, the maintenance spaces, these could be industrial or technical. Also, we can have residential. So residential could be entire building blocks, so it could be a proportion. Then after that, we've got commercial. So these could be shopping, it could be offices, it could be social. And then at the bottom, obviously, we've got lobbies. Now, these also could be access points for the player. For example, if you're inside Area 18, the player can get access to it there. And then lastly, we've got the underground. Now, these could be interesting as a connector space between buildings. So maybe you've gone in through one building, you go down, and it could bring you through to another part of a building. let's start with rooftops. Now, up until now, we've largely designed our cityscapes to be more of a backdrop to the landing zone. We have the social space generally in the middle, and then the cityscape goes around it. And they've been designed to give the best composition, to be interesting to fly around, but we've not really thought about designing these buildings from the inside out. So what we're looking at here is some potential concepts for what could be interesting landing spaces that drives the architecture of the building. With landing pads, it doesn't necessarily...
I see the conversation going on in chat. Just to confirm, they updated Loreville in order to, I believe, be able to fit the building interiors. The last thing we heard was that Microtech and Crusader already have the proper sized buildings. It would just be ArcWork that needs to be updated now, which obviously is a big undertaking. So we'll see how that goes.
There is a network hub that services a few different buildings. So what we're looking at here is maybe like a transit hub where the player could land, get on some transit, and then that would lead to some buildings. Okay, so maintenance spaces. So these could be really interesting in terms of player interaction. You know, they could be dealing with the power or the maintenance of the building. And then also you could have technical spaces. So these would be more for technicians. It could deal with the data or the communications. And what we're looking at here is potential some, gameplay puzzles where the player has to work their way inside the main operation booth. So moving on to residential. So there's a huge amount of potential here.
Yeah,
what we wanted to
there's a huge amount of potential here for monetization. This is, in my opinion, this is probably one of their best opportunities to get additional monetization in this game after it launches. Allowing people to spend money on real estate, okay, that sounds bad when you say real estate. Like how Cyberpunk lets you basically buy apartments in the game. I think GTA does this too. Allowing people to get apartments in different parts of these cities and spend real money would be an amazing way to make money for them without like digging into the gameplay and the balance of the actual game with things like ships or weapons and stuff like that. So I would be interested in seeing if that's something they're considering. Decorations, customizations of these spaces, like cosmetics and all kinds of things you could do with this. It would be a huge boon for monetization that could go beyond ship sales.
Residential is two things. One, explore investigating the potential player housing. So with that, we want to be able to create a variety of interior layouts.
This video is from 2022, I believe.
We want to explore a variety
2023,
of architectural styles.
last year.
So when we're looking at potential housing layouts, we wanted something fairly modular in a way in which we could create a variety of combinations. So whether it's living spaces or habitation spaces or social spaces. And also here we're looking at, we want the players to eventually be able to populate the player-owned habitation. So you see here like a first indication of how, the sort of dressing styles that you'd be able to do. Outside of something that's fairly utilitarian, we also want to do something that could be fairly high-end. So here we're just exploring some ideas about what a space could feel like on a different architectural style, and more generous windows, interior spaces dedicated to more than just habitation. And these would be focused on other landing zones. So imagine you come across these in Area 18, or it could be when we come to Terra. And also, like I said, it could be informing future player-owned habitation architectural sets. Now, outside of the living quarters, there's also the social spaces just outside. And we want these to be more than just the corridors that we're seeing in the game right now. So these could be multi-layered social spaces. And these could also inform advanced traversal routes for the player to be able to get inside these habitation rooms. So as we're talking through various architectural styles...
Dude, I'm sorry, but that scene looks straight out of Deus Ex. This looks like, I would think this was Deus Ex concept art if I saw it without any sort of branding on it. The lights, the setting, it looks kind of like that neo-Victorian Deus Ex cyberpunk kind of style. Ah, man. Speaks to me.
These habitation rooms.
Blade Runner?
So as we're talking through various
same cloth
architectural styles, what you're seeing here is just a collection of ideas, a collection of architectural intent to create like a palette or a mood. that will inform art style and gameplay opportunities. So outside of residential, we're moving into the commercial area. So what this means is that
I think the residential area has the most potential out of all of this to be something that they could really like, the game would just benefit from. But the rest of this I could see also having missions take place. We've seen some building interiors used for missions and things like Siege of Orison and the Orison Towers that you can go and run missions in. So they've started to flirt with it a little bit. And I'm hoping that when they do redo R-Corp, that's where they start to introduce this kind of stuff. But we will see.
It means we can look at areas that are more gameplay focused outside of player habitation. So when we're talking about these could be office blocks, these could be corporate owned. Inside here, there could be corporate wings, there could be manufacturing, there could be office spaces. And what we try to think about with these, it's more than just a flat room. There should be.
And I know he keeps saying these could be. Keep in mind, this is the director of art. So this isn't necessarily a gameplay presentation. He's giving us a look at the early designs of this and where they might want to go with it. Like they've done with the derelict outposts, they've done them with the underground facilities. Ian Leyland generally takes this stuff from the early side of things and then delivers it to people to put gameplay in. But I could definitely see a lot of the potential of if they can get the mission system, which they've shown us quite a bit at this point, that procedural mission system that they have developed and they have been using to make missions in the game now. Oh my god, I can't spell. Subsumption. There we go. So this is the system that they were using. They showed us it on Star Citizen Live, being able to put together missions through flowcharts. If they can figure out how to make this work more procedurally and quickly, all kinds of these MMO-style missions where they're not necessarily that gripping, they're just kind of tasks, fetch quests, kill quests, stuff like that. But if you can dress them up in different environments and lore and factions using these kinds of buildings, it could really flesh out a lot of the things you could do in a city, further allowing players to not have to spend time traveling up to a space station or across the system to a moon or making their space station or their starship ready to go and run missions when they could just run those missions in the city they spawned in. I think that'd be also really healthy for the game.
But these could be office blocks, these could be corporate owned. Inside here, there could be corporate wings, there could be manufacturing, there could be office spaces. And what we try to think about with these, it's more than just a flat room. There should be advanced traversal, it should be multi-tiered. So outside of the commercial offices, we've also got like restaurants and bars. So what we're looking at here is a pretty cool like skyline bar in Lowville. That could be fun. But also in restaurants, Chris always described the idea of really high-end restaurants in the game where you can get access to food choices that isn't available anywhere else. So right at the foot of the building, we're going to start talking about the lobby. So as I said before, these are going to be access points to the player, but also we can do more than just a standard foyer that we're seeing in the game right now. So this sort of space we're seeing here is, imagine there's an underground transit network, and that transit station feeds a network of building lobbies. So these could be social spaces, these could be really good combat spaces. They could have access to mini restaurants or bars or facilities. And we're just showing that in a variety of art styles. So one's a fairly low end, one could be fairly high end, but the infrastructure is the same. So as we're exploring art style opportunities, this then drives where it would be appropriate. So some would be more appropriate in someone like Area 18, some would be more appropriate in someone like Orison, and obviously some would be more appropriate for future landing zones like Odessa or Prime. And also when we're talking about...
Dude, you can't just say that. He just mentions the landing zones from Magnus and Terra. Just like, oh yeah, casual.
Lobbies, again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to describe multi-layer traversal spaces. So in these illustrations, you're seeing a variety of routes to then help inform the initial conversation with level design. Now, finally, we're going to talk about the underground. Now, this is, I think, one of the coolest spaces. So rather than just focusing on the positive axis of the building, we're going to look at the underground. Now, what this does, it means we can access a whole area of play space that doesn't need to be contained inside the building. So within the lobby, we want the player to start to traverse down into these spaces, and these could be underground transit networks. They could be abandoned underground transit networks. This then could drive potential racing opportunities. So when we was doing this, we thought, it'd be really cool. Like, what would it look like if there's an underground street race going on there? Also, there could be traversal opportunities. Like I said before, if the player wanted to go into one building, down, and then through, and then up
these
into
are basically
building.
like dungeons, right? Like caves. These look almost like the abandoned space stations if they were just on the ground. And somebody said this looks a lot like what we got with the distribution centers. I do think a lot of the art and development that they use for these different locations will cross over. You know, just the difference between putting it above or below ground and in what level of where is it at. But this could be a great sort of location for a mission, and it's just a side entrance into a city, really. We know for a fact that Lorville's supposed to have those. Don't know about the other cities, though.
Down, and then through, and then up into another building. What would that traversal network be like? Especially if we're thinking about if it's an older part of the underground of a city, maybe it's less used, you know, people have built up. That would instantly inspire a whole bunch of traversal and investigation missions there. Or maybe there's an old aqueduct or an old infrastructure underground. You know, this could be perfect for underground street racing or other racing opportunities. So in a nutshell, what we looked at is a blue sky investigation into what building interiors could be like for the game. These are essentially dungeon kits. You know, we want to be able to work on these areas in a fairly procedural manner, and we want these to be dungeon opportunities for gameplay spaces. It also will start to inform the future of player-owned habitation and the type of visuals or look and feels that could be. So this ties into a much larger initiative. So we're seeing it a little bit now with the redo of Lorville. That's turning into a much bigger city.
There's that mention.
And what that means is every city in the game is ready for these building interior spaces. Now, one thing to note is the cityscapes are probably going to change a little bit. Just from an initial investigation, we found our buildings are quite small. So expect to see the skylines go through a period of transition, but that's cool because that means we're designing the inside of the buildings and then we'll redo the architecture to fit to that. So I think it's going to be super positive for the game. So just in case we was thinking it's all just blue sky concept, actually we're going to start full production on these spaces right at the end of this quarter.
So we did see mention of this production in monthly reports. Now, like I said, I think this slowed down as different things popped up that were a little more difficult. Maybe this did enter production, but they ran into something, they got dragged away. There are plenty of other things that the teams who would be working on this kind of thing would be doing. In fact, we can go to the progress tracker and look at the teams that were working on this and see if they had any other things going on. That video was from last year, earlier last year. I think it was February or March of 2023. February of 2023, yeah. So that's something that we could see an update on, at least at CitizenCon. I don't think it's ready. I don't think that will be coming before base building, but I do think it's, let's see, building interiors. So it had quite a bit of work, honestly, 148 weeks scheduled of work. So they were doing a lot with it, but that doesn't really tell us too much. Now, the Montreal Sandbox team did a lot of work on it, and them getting brought into the team as Turbulent got acquired last year might have thrown some wrenches in there as complications. They were also working on underground facilities, which we did get delivered this year, which means a lot of that time probably went towards underground facilities rather than towards the building interiors. We also got derelict settlements in that same time period, which means they are probably also working more on that. So we could use an update on building interiors for sure. I can't say whether or not they will actually show up at CitizenCon, but it is one of those big features that I think if they dropped an update on, a lot of people would be excited to hear about, as long as it was, you know, actually showed some progress in the engine. I'm going to put that at like a solid 60% possibility of seeing. I think that there is a chance we'll see it. I don't think it's close to a guarantee, but it's in that kind of place. I don't know. I'm going to lower that actually. I think that's more of a 50%. It's in this place where I think it's competing too much with base building as a grand focus, and I think they're going to focus pretty hard on base building. Speaking of which, let's take a look at base building. Okay, base building is a big one. Base building is basically a guarantee to be in CitizenCon this year, and we have a video that proves that. Let's go to the lovely, always inviting, always super friendly Twitter, and let's see if we've got their profile popping up on here. We don't. I will search for it. Roberts. There we go. So they put out a video on their Twitter a little while ago. It's probably in August sometime. Where they basically said, hey, we're going to show off base building at CitizenCon. So it was like, it's not a mystery. But I'll show you guys that just so that if anybody missed it, you get some eyes on before we jump into all the speculation game. Man, where was this? Here we go. All right, check this out. It's the one that I want to see.
Is bringing tremendous changes to how you manage your belongings. Your persistent hangar is now your first customizable home in the verse. Organize your cargo. Keep your gear close. And jump straight into the fray.
Not calling it X.
Your own space means quicker access to the things you need. And
so like they were just doing this random advertisement for 324, and then out of nowhere, I think this is because they just wanted to drum up a little bit more noise because people were just not feeling it at the time. So they were like, let's throw in base building at the end of this video too. Why not?
Just the beginning of establishing your home. Stay tuned for more at CitizenCon this year. Until then, get ready for Alpha 324. It's time to shape your own adventure.
So the video literally says, we're going to talk about this at 324 at CitizenCon. And one of the things that they highlight here are suit lockers, which, by God, we've been waiting for suit lockers for way too long to work. Like, actually too long. Suit lockers are, not only are they something that could help the game speed up the way that you play, they also were like in development quite a while ago. I mean, we could scroll back a lot. Yeah, they kind of finished their scheduled development at that time in 2022. The deliverable for them reads, introduces a consistent way to store clothes, armor, and items in a physicalized state, which, you know, looks a lot like this. It's basically what this is. Also includes a more robust and tactile method of storing items on shelves and attachment surfaces. This builds on the personal inventory, expanding the inventory UI to include lockers. Now, the big thing about these suit lockers I think we would get is the ability to walk up to the suit locker and with one click, equip everything on that loadout. This is like, I think, our physicalized way of saving loadouts. A lot of the problems that people have with this game taking too long are the fact that every time they die, every time they reset, every time something happens, they have to go to their inventory, get all their items, put them on their body, and then get going. But if this existed and wherever you signed off, whether it was on your ship, in a homestead, in a space station hab, whatever, and you could just run over, click this, and boom, you're equipped, this would speed up the flow of this game a ton. But that's just one part of this. They also are probably going to end up talking about base building more seriously than they did last year. A lot of it was kind of conceptual last year. This year, they will probably show us some in-engine advancements. It might not be the actual full-on base building feature that we'll be experiencing, but I do think that will, like, they're pretty much due to show off what it's going to look like in the game, and I'm betting it's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting at CitizenCon this year outside of like Squadron 42 stuff. So here is what they showed about it last year, and we'll talk our way through this.
We'll be talking today about something special. It's an update on something that we talked about a little while ago, but we feel it's the future of Star Citizen, and it's the culmination of multiple different game systems coming together. So why don't you play the video?
Hello, Jake. Good to see you in chat, buddy. This one was hard to keep secret, huh? What other things you having a hard time keeping a secret right now, buddy? Wanna chat a little bit? Wanna talk a little bit? Tell us. Doesn't the music even kind of have some Satisfactory vibes to it? At least towards the end. I can't build with any other music in my ears, to be honest. Don't mention trains, Mihai, they hurt. Build your prison. One small microtransaction to open the doors. No, so this is somebody was mentioning greenhouses, right? I think that's kind of what this is, hydroponics they call it, but like building, farming. The biggest thing about this to me, and he'll go over this in the presentation, is this kind of stuff. Mining, refining, pumping water, probably stuff like that, is so freaking big. And I don't know if they talked about it during the economy talk a few weeks ago on Star Citizen Live, but I wonder how this would factor into the economy. We will get to that next. I think we will hear about the economy at CitizenCon. We'll talk about StarSim and the economy and that kind of stuff. But I'm wondering how a player base will fit into an economy alongside a normal outpost or a space station or something, if it'll be included. So like AI can make deliveries there and it's part of that ongoing economy, or if they sit separately. Those are the kind of details I'm hoping we get to hear. I'd be really interested in hearing more about that this year. I hope that's something that they get into in terms of the details. But I'm guessing it'll be a lot more about just like the placement of buildings and stuff.
All right, so base building. All right, it breaks down into two really large gameplay sections, planning ahead and prepping, and then you've got the on-site where you're actually gonna build. So with that, you need to figure out what your goal is. Is it to have a home with a nice view and relax? Is it to have a trading post where you want to create and sell items? Is it to gather resources available and move on to the next area? Or is it to be off grid and be completely self-sufficient? So with that, with your prep and everything like that, we've got blueprints.
They might actually talk about this too. I think this is kind of included in this talk, but crafting is mostly separate from base building in my opinion, and just the idea that like they don't have to come at the same time. But I think they're pretty heavily intertwined, and if they talk base building, I do expect them to talk crafting. We're going to go back real quick to another video that also talks about base building, and I think shows us how base building is a really, really good segue for them to go into exploration and how exploration gameplay in this game will work, and data running in general. Listen to this stuff here.
The level of certainty, that's interesting in that knowledge, information within Star Citizen is very often an analog concept. You don't necessarily know something or not know something, but rather you know things to varying degrees. And the easiest way that I could give for an example would be to consider a car that you're thinking about purchasing. If you're being asked to purchase a car and you haven't actually seen it, you're going to be very conservative in terms of your estimate of what it might be worth. If you're able to see it even from the exterior and verify there's tread on the wheels, the paint job looks okay, etc., then that's going to increase your perception of its value. If you're able to actually turn the car on, make sure it's running, or better yet, have a mechanic take a peek under the hood, then that's going to basically bring it even farther up the scale. And so a lot of what we're doing with the value of land, which ties over into the Pioneer, because you're going to be setting up these outposts ideally in optimal locations to exploit a lot of this value that's sitting on the surface of these planets. The next one up would be when the info was last verified. Knowing that there is a vast abundance of gold at a particular area, but the information is stale. It's 2 weeks old, it's a month old, it's 6 weeks old. As it gets more out of date, it becomes less and less valuable. And so what this means is that players will routinely have to refresh the knowledge of a particular area in order to maintain the perceived land value within the game. The last thing that I'd mention in regards to what constitutes knowledge is the value of location. If you've got a field of copper ore and it's in close proximity to a refinery, potentially at an outpost set up by one of these pioneers, then that ore field, the land that what you'd have to pay to actually purchase that land is going to rise in price. If on the other hand there's no refinery on that planet, and you have to basically spend 20 minutes basically carting the ore to another refinery and then getting it to its eventual destination, that's going to lower the lower the perceived value of that plot of land. So knowledge within the game is a really fundamental concept, and knowledge is a concept that once you've acquired it about a certain area or a certain object, you're able to transfer that to other friends, you're able to transfer that to organizations, you're able to sell that information to public information brokers, or freely submit it into the public domain.
So yeah, Tony talks about
Just jumping ahead a little bit here.
Value related to that. If you work your dials a little bit and you've got the proper equipment and the skills, then without actually having to make the journey, you could increase the potential value of that of that knowledge find by being able to discern the mass of the object. A large asteroid is going to be, all things being equal, be worth more than a smaller asteroid. But if you really want to ratchet it up, and this kind of goes back to the degrees of knowledge that I was talking about, if you actually make the journey to it, fly over, burn fuel, burn time, brave whatever dangers are between you and there, and you actually do a fly over the surface, then you may actually just visually see pools of hydrocarbons, gas venting from the surface, and again that raises up what you know about it all the more. If you really want to get specific about what's there and maximize the potential value of that find, though, then you're going to have to set down on the surface, and you're actually going to take core samples, and you're going to basically have these processed, analyzed, and you're going to do things like seismographic surveys and have et cetera, et cetera. And so all of this plays into a common theme that we're trying to execute upon, which is all of these high-level ideas and stuff.
Tony talks, huh?
A variety of different ways by which the player community can basically attack them, and by which these things will feed the outputs of one into the inputs of another.
The rest of the guys are like, okay. So that's just a little bit of kind of insight into at least the idea behind the design of how exploration and data running would both factor into base building and finding bases and setting up for them and preparing for them, which is something that Tony mentioned here is a part of it, planning ahead. So I just remember that as we go forward through this and they talk about having the right resources and all that kind of stuff.
So with that, with your prep and everything like that, we've got blueprints. So the recipes, everything in the game is fabricated from a blueprint. Players acquire blueprints via reputation rewards, missions, or rare NPCs. With any blueprint, you can actually do research on it and then create different variations. With materials, ranging from the common to ultra rare, you might find them at the local shop or have to travel around the universe to collect them. Unrefined.
This could be crazy big in terms of actually giving players something to care about. Blueprints could be a really good one. Even if you don't use them because you're not into crafting, this would be a great find to sell on the player market, or to sell to organizations and stuff like that. And they're probably you got to imagine that a blueprint for just like a simple gun, like a Bearing P4 or something, you could find that pretty simply. Maybe not as easily as the gun itself, but you could find it. And if they're physicalized, then that creates a great system for trading. And as somebody said, that could be a part of allowing players to get their subscriber items or their account bound items back. Maybe you don't necessarily always have that item ready to go, but you were awarded a blueprint for that item that's always connected to your account. So you will always be able to craft that thing back whenever you lose it.
Find simple materials or even complex components will all go into the fabrication.
So here's another big thing about base building that people are always concerned with is how is base building going to work if I want to log off and people can attack me? They're going to give us choices as to where we can have bases based on what kind of gameplay you're looking for. If you want to have a base that's always protected, you can. But they've got these money sinks like taxes and fees. The man with his fucking taxes. You'll have to pay. And there will be like a monthly fee. But you know what? What else are you going to spend money on, right? Everybody's like, hey, I have nothing to spend money on. I have no reason to want money. If you're owning these sorts of bases, if you're owning an apartment somewhere, if you're buying habs, renting hangars at space stations, these are all the kinds of money pits that you'll have to pay for. Even insurance on all the different things that you're buying. If you want them to easily be able to be claimed back, that kind of stuff, that's what we're earning for. So you could do that, or you could go to the completely lawless areas where you won't have protection, you won't have to pay, and you'll get access to the best resources, but you kind of gotta make sure you're safe.
With this, then you got location, location, location. First area is high security, so you must purchase the land. The base is actually invulnerable because of the planetary shield tech. A security will show up to protect it as well. You pay for the privilege, you're taxed. So at this point, you won't have the best resources available. You won't have access to the best resources available on the planet. If you don't pay your taxes, the shields will go away after a period of time, and the base will become derelict and will collapse. But this is low risk, low reward. Then you've got low security. So again, you must purchase the land. It's owned by an independent corp, gang, or faction. Again, you don't have access to all the best resources on the planet. The base is vulnerable. AI NPCs will show up and protect the base if it's attacked. The protection will escalate over time. Player can also build defenses to help mitigate this as well. And then
hey, what's up, Griffin? Good to see you, dude.
Medium risk. Then you've got lawless. So this is no protection other than what you build. There's shields, anti-air. Players can disable the shields by getting close to them and destroying them. High risk, high reward. Since there's no taxes, no protection fees, you get a high return on the resources that you collect. Now, there's some cross-shard and server meshing considerations that will kind of adjust this design in the future, but we'll get into that later once we're really building it. So from here, you've got the tools. So this is what we would consider a surveyor. With this, we want to actually cater to everybody's playstyle, whether you're solo or in an org.
Yeah, I think their best bet is to go with levels of security as a way to allow for different types of gameplay. I don't think there's really any other way you could do something like this. I mean, I've spent like a total of 2 minutes thinking about it in my lifetime, but seems like the most reliable way to do it.
You got different buildings that you can produce, from small, medium to large to XL or XL. So with the surveyor tool, you can only build the small buildings. With a vehicle, you can build small and medium-sized buildings. With the Galaxy, you can build small to large structures.
Yeah, when are we getting that, Tony?
And then obviously...
Sorry, Todd.
With the Pioneer, Pioneer can do it all. And it still works as a mobile base. And we'll talk about some of the more expanded features that we're adding to it in later on. So, and then it's also, we're exploring what can be done in space, not...
So this is, oh yeah, this is him basically saying they want to try and experiment with building space stations, but I'm completely sure even if they did have base building at Star Citizen or CitizenCon this year, which they will not be talking about building space stations.
Just on the planet.
But this could be what we see. In terms of most likely things that will be base building demo ready by CitizenCon, out of all this, I'm going to guess it's this. And probably not a huge amount of stuff. Like, they're going to show us this kind of stuff more in the, here's the long-term sort of plans, but these first two segments of base building, I think, are what we should be considering as any sort of possibility anytime soon, within, by the end of next year. But who knows? Who knows how much work they have been able to put into this? Again, I think this is one of those things that's probably been slowed down a little bit this year as things took longer to get into than they planned. But we do also know that a lot of the team has been working on things far beyond 4.0 for at least 6 months. And so they've been pretty focused on this kind of stuff too.
We're exploring what can be done in space, not just on the planet. So from here, you set off on your journey. So with the land claim, you put your tool down where you want, you launch the drone that is built into the machine, and then from there, this allows the player to access the base building and also land claim mode. With the land claim modes, the player can actually change the size and position of what area they want to claim, and it also shows you the cost and taxes associated with it. If it's in a taxable zone and you don't own the land, this interface will default to it.
We actually talked about hacking earlier.
If you own the land or it's in a lawless area, it will automatically go to base building mode. So with the overhead view of the land, you can actually place down buildings exactly where you want.
Okay, so we've seen some demonstrations of this. The tool that they are going to use or give us the ability to use to build these locations is the same one that they use for their outposts. Obviously, it'll be a little bit different, but it's based on the same framework of overhead, being able to look down at the ground, We'll probably have some sort of overlay that tells us about what resources we're plopping down on. But overall, the idea of connecting modules of buildings together. And I don't think that'll build the base immediately. We all know Star Citizen. We've been following it for quite some time. This will probably be something that sets down the wireframe of that thing and then builds it over time. And you have to make sure the resources are available in some way.
You can see the resources beneath the surface, and then you can also place multiple buildings before you actually build. So you can see how it will all come together. You'll see the resources that are needed for it. And then you can also switch back and forth between different modes, which are showing off the resource network and how you link basically power generators to consumers.
Best guess I would have is that these drones come out of these trucks in the back here, and you have to keep loading resources into these trucks. So for this to work, they've got to have some level of drone tech working, which they did say was working for Squadron, and they were moving over to Star Citizen. I think a couple years ago, John Crew said something about that. They would also need a way for you to just submit a resource box and have another thing recognize those resources and use them. It's kind of like the opposite cycle of what we already do in the Vulture and the Reclaimer, right? It spits out the resources and we take them. Reverse that, we put the resources in and it uses it. And then these drones basically just reset on the truck, get reloaded, and then come back out and continue to building. That seems like the simplest way for them to pull something like this off, if they are going to want to include drones. The Pioneer is something completely different. That's like, they want that to build out prefabs and be like a moving factory. That thing's insane.
And then the player can move or deconstruct existing buildings right now with no charge. Fabrication. So when you basically build these buildings, they don't come with any furnishings. And if you didn't bring any with you, then you want to build a fabricator. So depending on what you want to build, there's different sizes of them that support buildings from decorations, armor, weapons, components, and even ships. So like base building mode, you need blueprints, resources to craft what you want. Everything fabricated is produced from it produces a physicalized entity. Stats and quality will depend on the quality of the materials actually used. Once you've done that and you've built your decorations, now you can actually fill the room the way that you want to fill it. So furnishings can be purchased at different locations, or they can actually be fabricated. You can do that via first person or in a dedicated mode in the Surveyor's tool. With that, you've got different types of buildings. So you've got utility style, which would be garages, freight elevators, landing pads, storefronts. And then you've got extractors. So with extractors,
these are what really matter.
We want to make sure that nothing in regards to resource gathering is fully automated. A level of player engagement is always needed. So as Nick talked about before, there are different types of commodities, radioactive, perishable, etc.
But I want to be satisfactory.
What you'll be doing is pulling out full containers. Then from there, it'll be repairing, or there's wear and tear associated with it, or even misfires like you saw in Thorsten's talk and Guillermo's talk yesterday. There's also upgrade paths for making them more efficient or resilient. Power generators. So with different types of power generators, there'll be some that are more cost effective.
Yo, this is kind of, this is cool to me. If they actually have solar panels for power generation, I'm going to find that really sick because we have access to entire planets. So you could, who knows how they'll handle the resource of power, whether you'll be able to package it up and ship it places, but imagine if you could just cover like an 8 square kilometer stretch of the pole of a planet with solar panels and just pump out energy that you can store in batteries and ship out to other places for money. Like, that's such a niche kind of application, but I don't see why that wouldn't be possible if you can ship and sell batteries. It'd be so cool. But I'm interested in seeing how they handle this power generation part of it for sure.
It's effective in different areas. Solar panels will not always work in darkness. Fuel generators will need to be filled up every now and then batteries to store excess power. Then you've got producers. So things that will require the players to combine different resources to produce new items. And then you've got defense. So anti-air, anti-personnel, and then shield generators. And then the big one.
Yes. Starts development in Q1 24. I think most of us knew that didn't mean it was going to come in 2024, but I'm wondering how things have gone with it since then. Obviously, this whole talk was started by the fact that they have something to tease about it, but we don't know just how far it's come. Like this is what I imagine it's going to look like for T1. Just a building like this, maybe something small, but like not much else besides just a place where you can plop down, have a bed, have some furniture, and have like suit lockers. None of this like we're mining and extracting and building out power systems and all of that. I think that stuff comes a little bit later. So I wouldn't expect to see anything about this in depth at CitizenCon. I think they'll show it in the sense that like they'll be like, oh, it's coming later. But as far as the stuff that's actually coming out anytime soon for base building, I think this is like probably the best look we've gotten at it so far. Just this little bit. Hope to be proven wrong. Don't mind to be proven right. Whatever they can get out in terms of base building, I think that'll really help the game out. As long as it's easy to log on, log off from there. It's easy to start from there. And there's a little bit more to do on planets in the areas. I don't think I have too much more on base building specifically. We can move on to the economy. They've got a great mention of StarSim and some discussion surrounding it. Oops, I just searched the wrong thing there. In that Star Citizen Live we were looking at earlier.
And we've gone over the sheet that balances every single mission, and sort of gone over how it feels and giving some more information, you know, been like, right, this one's insane, right? Because it takes into account you'll get a crime stat. And then if you get a crime stat inherently, you either go to prison and serve time off, or you have to go to Korea, do your hacking. People will come kill you, PvP. You've got all the AI there to battle against. And then because of that, you know, it's like, right, well, every illegal mission baseline should have this value, and then anything that's extra gets put on top of it. So it's not like a cold and unfeeling system. It's something that is nurtured with love.
And like
and the advantage.
Love.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The advantage is that because it's a combination of maths and design, then we can make bespoke decisions as we need to, but fundamentally underneath it all, there is an algorithm. So in the future, when StarSim, when a system is making these decisions in a more algorithmic way, the entire system can be balanced at once and then tweaked and designed accordingly, which is a really important place for us to be when it comes to balancing an entire universe.
Yeah, I'm certain that there were people who looked at the information from the last SCL and did some maths and was like, it's going to take 107 days to earn an 890 jump at that kind of payout and stuff. We just want to reiterate again that every aspect of Star Citizen is still a work in progress. We're in alpha. We're going to try some stuff, and then we're going to try some other stuff, and we're going to try some other stuff. It's even Master Modes has some changes coming down the road.
Don't even say that. Don't say the words, Jared.
Don't get too excited. It's just more evolution. We try a thing, we listen, we try another thing. You can say a lot of things about Star Citizen. I don't think anybody can't say we're afraid of trying new things and afraid of taking a different direction after we try something. So
okay, let's go to the monthly reports from this year, because I'm almost positive they have some decent insights into what they've been doing with StarSim and the economy stuff. So you go to the economy team, and at least in March, let's see, they were talking about mission rewards are being rebalanced. Okay, in-game pricing is currently underway for new harvestables and hangar flare. Economy are currently involved in the design of reputation and org progression and are starting to balance the time and cost of auto-loading freight elevators. We saw that. Finally, a comprehensive list of all intended resource transformers, sources, and sinks were created to help ensure the economy is stable for the long haul. I don't have current information on that, But if we go back to the old Quantum demo, we did get to kind of see what this looked like in practice based on the tools that they are working on. So here is a little demo of them focusing on, again, going back to this monthly report, this is in March of this year, intended sources, transformers, and sinks to help ensure the economy is stable in the long haul, suggesting that there are sources, transformers, and sinks for resources, factories, refineries, caves, mines, all that kind of stuff. So here we can listen in on kind of how that process plays out in their own back-end system around the economy.
And so once again, you see the economy spring to life. And so now you've actually got two different tiers going. The factory, let's go ahead and open up the factory. The factory, just like the refinery, needs workers in order to build these power plants. It also needs refined aluminum. So now you've got multiple things going on. The factory is willing to buy refined aluminum. Someone has to transport that aluminum from Crusader to Hurston. So some of the quanta are basically working, they're basically working as freighters to move that product from one location to another. Some of them were working at the factory on Hurston. Some of them were working at the refinery on Crusader. Some of them are heading back to Delamar to actually do more mining. So you've got an entire little, economic cycle going here. However, it's going to wind up coming to a dead end here. Let's go ahead and accelerate it again.
So I just want to butt in there. I think a big part of why this system was never used in the game is because for as long as we've existed, as long as the game has existed, we've had commodities that you could buy. We've had loot that you could find. That's not true. It's not as long as we've existed. Let's say since 3.15, you've had commodities to buy, loot that you can find, weapons, armor, items, all that kind of stuff that could factor into an economy, but they didn't have the prices settled in or figured out. They didn't have the actual locations where these things would matter figured out, and they didn't have any sort of network that connected them all. So when we see lines like this, where they build the list of the sources, caves, mines, those kinds of things, the transformers, factories, and refineries, and the sinks, like a storefront, you can tell that they're starting to actually consider this stuff. We keep on jumping forward, and let's go to the April one. Doesn't look like they even had any economy stuff going on in April. June? Let's see. In June, they were balancing the prices of entire item sets, components, FPS weapon attachments, ammunitions, consumables, commodities, getting them into an actual place where they made sense. The team's ongoing work also involved a new economy for quantum and hydrogen fuel to ensure that refueling isn't a chore while maintaining the narrative feel of a large universe with a unique economy spread across different star systems. So, again, placing some reasoning behind the pricing for fuel. They're also creating player profiles to better understand how different career gains and use resources. That's not as telling. Jumping forward to July. Let's see, they were working mainly on the Pyro system with outer rings. Worked on a refactor that will allow them to create and modify shops in a more scalable manner. And a balance pass was also done on vehicle components, including the new life support system. So a lot of price adjustments this year. A lot of figuring out where things live inside of the economy. And that's why I think they're really starting to move forward to at least give us some updated messaging on this system. This is a economic system that we haven't heard about properly in like 3 years now. And it's one of the main driving forces that I think holds people back from really enjoying or even striving to try this game, is that you're just earning money to earn money. And until we can get proper supply and demand and reasons to transport things and move things and have value in location, it's just not as fun. So this whole setup, we need to see something like this at CitizenCon.
Just like what we saw before, because eventually the factory fills up all of its warehouses. It can't take any more. It therefore has no more, it has no more need for refined aluminum. That will eventually shut down the refinery, which will in turn eventually kill off the miners. And you can see there that the inventory is still building on the aluminum.
which is why there's still some activity.
There's a lot, yeah. But as soon as it's done, it starts flatlining, so you see that the inventory is capped out.
Yep, and now they're almost done. The factory has basically got, it's got all it can handle. The refinery has all of its all it can handle. Therefore, the entire loop draws to a close again. So let's add one more node. Let's add a shop that sells power plants to ArcCorp.
Yo, I see Red Monster in the chat. How you doing, dude? Good to see you.
And
love to see how they make this responsive to player actions.
The shop is looking.
I think the idea is that with our 10% being such a small amount of affecting it, we can basically have some effect on it, and like we temporarily throw prices off and stuff, but it self-regulates and corrects itself after a little while. Which I hope is how it goes.
Retail shop, it's looking to sell power plants. In order to do that, it needs to be able to buy them for one price, sell them for another. So it adds its markup on, and it, just like the factory that requires transport of the refined aluminum from Crusader to Hurston, it needs the power plants transported from the factory to it. And so if you notice, if the individual quanta, they'll actually have a little translucent circle around them if they're carrying goods. And so you can easily differentiate whether or not the ones that are moving, for example, from Hurston back to the mine are empty. They're going to load up on ore. And then when they're heading back to Delamar, and then from Delamar back to Crusader, they've actually all got ore. And so this loop will actually continue indefinitely. And the reason is because we've cheated something for tonight, and it sounds very similar to what I was basically saying was a bad idea earlier, which is the shop right now is a simple consumer. It's burning off that inventory. The difference here is that the solution to that is very simple in the context of quantum. And the reason is these quanta, the next step of what we'll be working on is they'll actually require ships. Ships require engines. And so all of a sudden there's a real demand for how many power plants do you need? How many ships do you need? It all follows the same logical equation.
That was the page.
So
this is kind of what we're seeing, right? In the monthly reports that we just looked at. If here it's saying sources, transformers, and sinks, you got your source here at Delamar, you got your transformers here in Hurston and Crusader, and you've got your sink here with the shop. So from what I'm reading, they're working on this kind of a model.
Sudden there's a real demand for how many power plants do you need? How many ships do you need? It all follows those same logical equations. So let's go ahead and add a bit more economic complexity.
Actually, a slide.
So thus far, we've shown a very basic economic loop. One commodity, one refinery, one factory, and one retail shop. The real world, of course, is far more complicated. You'll have lots of different commodities, refining and production nodes, retail shops, and of course, players in quanta competing against one another for a limited supply of goods and services. It's this competition, this economic natural selection that ensures that things remain in balance, that a logical equilibrium is reached. Should have already gone to it. So, next. So, our current architecture basically has players connecting to a game server.
Okay, it's kind of server meshing talk, I think.
And then we've got services behind the scenes that can feed information to these servers and receive information back in return. And so you can see here, we've got shop services and probability volume services and all of this sort of thing. The basic problem with this arrangement is that services don't have any knowledge of what NPCs are doing, or rather what they should be doing. So that shop service that controls the prices, it's got algorithms, but it has no real understanding. It doesn't understand that there are 10,000 NPCs that do or don't need this, or what pirates are doing, or any of that. We don't simulate at that high level anywhere within the game right now. You have servers that basically instantiate the stuff near you, and you have the services that can run these formula, and that's basically it. Now, they can implement these services, these algorithmic price calculations, but supply and demand only comes from players and hard-coded formulae. And it's the same for missions and PVs. The data is completely static and can't evolve. The number of servers, of course, as we've seen here, it varies depending upon how many players are in the game. So let's go ahead and add quantum. Quantum changes this in dramatic fashion. It gives us a place where we can efficiently simulate NPC behavior and then feeds that behavior to the game server so that players can experience it. Further, it allows player actions to be fed back into the simulation so that there's no meaningful difference between the real and simulated worlds. Quantum creates a complete loop. NPCs can be simulated in efficient fashion. And I actually meant to say that quantum feeds the services, which in turn feed the game servers. So let's go ahead and...
That actually kind of... This is a server meshed environment, is I'm pretty sure what he's insinuating here. And it would kind of make sense after this to assume that quantum is not something they'd want to run without a server meshed environment. I was kind of half paying attention, but it does seem like they draw kind of a close connection between the two.
Get back to the simulation. And what we're going to do now is alter the power plant formula. So let's add a bit of complexity by changing the production formula for power plants to require laranite.
We're gonna add some.
We need to change. No, we need to change the production formula.
No, we gotta change we're gonna add laranite first.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we do want to add the new mine first. So we're going to add a laranite mine to Walla. And then we want to go ahead and add a refinery for this laranite. We'll add that to the Hurston L3. And now let's go ahead and adjust that power plant formula. And we're going to change the power plant formula. Right now it requires 0 laranite. We're going to change that to 2. And what we're going to very quickly see here is that we're going to start getting some laranite flowing to the Hurston factory so that the power plants can continue to be created. Yep, and that's that loop of guys right there. That's what they're taking. Now, one of the important things here is that let's go ahead and look at the Hurston aluminum. Bring Hurston factory aluminum. Now, what wound up happening there is it was very low for a period of time, and that's because they were actually burning off that aluminum inventory as fast as
this is from 2019.
And the reason why you see that spike there in the aluminum inventory is because as soon as we altered the formula so that power plants now require laranite, they were still receiving from all these freighter transports. They still had aluminum coming in, but they could no longer produce power plants. So it stalled, and then all of a sudden they started stockpiling. And then when you see that the aluminum started falling, that's because finally they started receiving supplies of laranite, and they were able to resume the production process. And so all of a sudden, their aluminum started getting burned off at a natural rate.
For the record, a couple of folks from our community ran into Tony Z earlier this year and had a talk with him. And he sounds like he's working on some things, mainly the back end side of those things, though, not developing the economy directly. That's what people like Eric and Elliot seem to be doing now. But he still got his hands in the pie, so to speak. Speak to so? I don't even, what's the proper phrase there? So let's go to my handy dandy text document. And let's throw StarSim in here as a, I'm going to call it like a 75% chance we're going to see that. What else did we go over here? Base building. Base building is absolutely a 100% chance. That's just, it's not even a question. We put org tools on there. Economy is StarSim stuff. Okay. Planet Tech V5. Pretty sure they've talked about Planet Tech V5 in a monthly report here somewhere. Planet Tech. Okay, last month. This is February. So in January, the Planet Tech team began improving the editor workflow for creating planets and planning out the next version of Planet Tech, V5. Planetech V5 will cover a variety of areas, but the primary goals are to make creating planets quicker and easier, and to try and achieve more diversity, density, and consistency in quality across whole planetary surfaces. I think one of the things that they were able to do significantly with Planetech V4, or rather what they've done with Planetech V4 since they released it, which was I think when Microtech came in, was start to get more large planetary features in the game. We've seen those on, I think it was Pyro 2 or 3 with the big rock arches, and the rivers that they've included, and the ability to place down bases and actually deform the ground around them. Those are some of the big improvements they've added. I think Planetech V5 is going to be focused on things like allowing for better planetary scattering, so denser forests, possibly jungles, and things like that. Better biome transitions, fauna, and their inclusion in the ecosystem. Don't they have a Planetech team section on here? And stuff like that. I'm about to pull up actually a presentation that they did here that goes over some of their plans for Planetech. All right, so in June, they also said GPU terrain generation was implemented as a stepping stone to the team's plan for a fully GPU-generated virtualized terrain, which will be utilized in Planetech V5. So throughout the year, they've been talking about Planetech. It's not like these other features that are kind of quiet, that they're not sharing anything about. At least in the monthly reports, these have been popping up. And I think they've got, it's pretty much a given that they're going to be talking about this when it comes down to it at CitizenCon this year. So here's what they were talking about when it comes to Planetech last year. They've already implemented some of the changes, but I think these will be some of the big key parts as to what we'll be seeing at CitizenCon this year, and likely included in the Pyro development.
Isn't really applicable unless you've got a really good performance first. Some other quick updates. We've got the screen space shadows as added to Alpha 320. It gives us some extra detail in our shadows across characters, and it's particularly on planets, it helps a lot. And we've also got a new texture and mesh streaming engine that helps us get as much possible detail as we can onto your VRAM on your GPU. And it does something we call load balancing. It will scale dynamically for your GPU to make sure we can get the absolute best possible results. We've also got some more streaming improvements coming in the next release. Just to give you a quick show of what the screen space shadows mean, here we've got a planet with no shadows. I think it's Microtech. The shadow maps, so you see these, the normal shadow maps that fill in half the scene. But then when we get the screen space shadows, you look in the top of the screen or in the flowers, they type of fill in the detail for the rest. They really help type of bed the scene in and stop these things looking at floating. Next up, just want to talk about planets for a little bit. It's something I get asked about a lot of what's happening next with planets. So we've got quite a lot of R&D in progress. First thing, we've got 2 new pieces of tech being started recently. First is virtual terrain texturing. It's quite a technical detail, but what this means for you is we're hopefully going to get much less popping or no popping at all.
So this is,
we're going to achieve this by moving all the calculations to the GPU.
That's what we just read about in the June monthly report.
And we'll be reusing the same type of patch-based system that Will talked about in his water presentation, and it should give you major CPU savings as well. So we're quite looking forward to getting this in. Another benefit is that it's going to give us the ability to add more complicated logic on, so we can type of do more diverse and interesting terrain, like things like, you know, we don't have beaches at the moment, we'll be able to achieve that. And there's other similar things where, based on the local conditions, we're able to do more advanced decision making. Next thing we want to look at, which is probably the thing we asked about the most, is our scattering system, which is what's responsible for putting all the trees and the rocks down.
Somebody did just mention, I'm going to look this up because I do remember also this being something that was mentioned, that they talked about the scattering system specifically. And like I had said, jungles were a thing. Yeah, here we go. So for Planetech V5, this is in August, the team focused on enhancing terrain performance through a computer shader-driven pipeline that catches material attributes to reduce redundant computations. Alongside this, the revamped material scattering system now supports physically based distribution, allowing for denser biomes such as jungles and forests by eliminating distinctions between small and large mesh ground coverings. So, again, the work they've talked about here as far as the future of planets is stuff they've been working out throughout the year, and they will probably show us in real time at CitizenCon. They'll probably give us like a sizzle reel of new planets they've been developing and just show us some of the biomes they've been experimenting with. One of those kind of like the Unreal Engine trailers you would get well before any games actually get that into game.
We're going to, again, move this to 100% to the GPU, and that should let us have vastly longer draw distances right up until the horizon and much better performance. So we'll finally get rid of the dreaded pop of trees coming in for you. We also have to integrate it with our harvestable system, the resource system, and the awesome fire system you just saw a minute ago. Another point is it's going to be a hierarchical-based system, which what that means is we'll be able to use nearby vegetation or rocks to influence what other vegetation and rocks can grow or will show up. And this lets us produce much more complicated rule sets, so we can do things like have a tree that maybe underneath it doesn't have any grass, or maybe certain trees come together in clumps, and we'll get a much more natural distribution of vegetation. And final thing.
Yeah, to be honest, that GPU utilization of Planet Tech rendering is kind of a sleeper because it doesn't sound super fancy, but that would the way that could help with game performance on planets would be amazing. Hopefully that also includes the things like the caves and the rivers and even the outposts that are on the planets.
What we want for planets is we want to be able to build them much easier, much faster, and we want to make sure they are truly unique. At the moment, our planets are unique. However, they are built from type of tile sets, like pre-built things that get mixed and matched together and blended in complicated ways so that you don't see the repetition. But it's not truly unique, not in the same way that the Grand Canyon might be, or the River Nile, or Mount Everest. And that's what we want. So to get that, we need to replicate the complicated natural processes on Earth, like geology, climate, erosion, and these things aren't trivial. So we've got 3 options. We've got offline tools, Houdini, Terragen, things like this. We could simulate all these processes in the engine. But we've started some R&D a few months ago on whether we can use machine learning to do some of this. So just to give you a quick idea of how that would work, or how it could work, if you just start with some random input here, it's just like some noise. We run it through a temporary simulation, so we can type of get a more reasonable approximation of simulation at different altitudes and latitudes on Earth. And then what we do is we categorize all this into different biomes. So based on the temperature and moisture, you'd find out what is a desert, what is a forest. And this part is crucial. So this is the input for our machine learning algorithm. We could come up with this image any other way. You could hand paint it as an artist, or we could just randomize the noise to get a different set of images. And then what we do is we take the large data sets we already have from Earth, from Mars, and from the Moon, and we train it on exactly the same distribution, so biomes, so forests, grasslands, and things like this. And by training it on exactly the type of data we get in reality, we can take this and then push just that, and then we can get these lovely height maps out of it that tell us a really realistic distribution. You can see here, this is a height map, so the black areas are low. You can see all the little rivers and valleys, and this had 0 art input aside from this image, which is a very nice result. It's early days. This is based on something called a custom diffusion neural network. It's, like I said, it's pre-trained on Earth data, and it's been built up in patches so that it just doesn't become too expensive to build. And the little circular patches get added together, and to avoid any seams in the image. And then just to help you visualize it, I've just put some colorization on it to show you where snow and beaches might be, and just wrapped it around a planet to give you a better sense so it doesn't look quite so abstract. Yeah, but this is very early days, this stuff, but we're hopeful this will be helping the future of how we build planets quickly and efficiently.
So yeah, this was basically conceptual when they shared it last year. Their plans for the future of Planet Tech. Some of this stuff, this is a whole presentation about just different things that they're developing in the engine. So you got the water simulation, they added that in. You've got your temporal upscaling, your high dynamic range stuff, they've added that in. You've got some of the lighting stuff, they haven't added that in yet, the ray tracing. Cloth tech and hair tech and damage and scopes, and there's a whole bunch of things in this presentation. Some of it has come in, some of it hasn't, but this is very clearly not something that was ready to go, since it's just a bunch of pictures and words. And that's a good way to look at the whole presentation. If they're just showing stuff like this, definitely don't expect it to come particularly soon. it's usually further out if they're not showing stuff in the engine. And that's why a lot of people were very excited from last year's CitizenCon, because a lot of the stuff they showed was in the engine. And some of that stuff has shown up. Some of it has not yet. We will see if 4.0 ends up bringing more of those features into the game this year.
Thank you. So the last thing I wanted to talk about today is our Gen 12 renderer and Vulkan. This has been ongoing for quite some time, taking a lot longer than we would have liked, but we're finally getting to the end of this long journey. For those who don't know, the reason this was being implemented is largely for performance.
Vulkan, I wonder when we're going to get an update on that. I'm guessing at CitizenCon as well. Vulkan, really the main thing, so they've gotten Vulkan as an API into the game, and you can use it, but it doesn't do its multi-threading support for CPUs yet, which is really one of the big places where we would see benefits from it. Hopefully we can see that in 4.0. I think that'd be it would be very fitting to have that in 4.0. As just like 3.0, I think 4.0 kind of needs to be a paradigm shift for how the game is played and understood and develops, and better rendering, all of the improvements that we can hope for in terms of getting the game optimized. 4.0 just makes a lot of sense for that. The last thing on our list today that we were looking at, Planet Tech V5, we're going to put that at 100%. That one's definitely going to show up, considering all of the talk we've seen out of it this year and the talk from last CitizenCon. But the last thing, and probably the thing we will hear the most about at CitizenCon next year, is Squadron 42. This one should be interesting, because Squadron 42 is the most important thing to the company right now. Obviously, we all care about, well, you name it, base building, exploration, data running, the economy, master modes. Am I right? We've got our list of important stuff. Server meshing probably tops most of ours. But the absolute most important thing to CIG right now is Squadron 42. And that's for the one reason everybody likes to, hop on CIG's case for: money. Somebody pull up that Mr. Krabs money from SpongeBob. Doubt they will release a beta. Yeah, I don't think they will release a beta for Squadron, for sure. I think maybe there will be a playable demo at CitizenCon, and I think they're going to do a big-time trailer. Probably a couple of trailers. Probably a gameplay demo where they show somebody playing a bit of Squadron, and then they also drop a trailer which acts as their opening up of their marketing campaign, and ends up being the thing that most people outside of the Star Citizen community see. So one of the things that I'm planning on doing, me and Mrs. Tomato have already started our preparations for this. We are going to be looking more outside the community to talk with folks and how they've perceived and taken Star Citizen. If you want to see how that goes, I highly suggest signing up or subscribing to Space Tomato 2, the YouTube channel. We'll be doing podcast episodes, hopefully a couple streams with folks from outside of the community. Already talked to one of my favorites in the gaming YouTube sphere, Luke Stevens, and he'll be joining me for a talk right after CitizenCon. So we'll be doing a couple of more probably following that. And a lot of that I think will be based on Squadron 42. A lot of what people are going to be seeing come out of CitizenCon will be Squadron 42. And let's take a look at kind of what they were showing last year, just to prep our expectations. You think a playable demo will be bad for hype? I don't know, man. They loved the playable demo at Pyro. Release date, I think a release window. I think it'll be something like holiday of 2025, or this season 2025, or first quarter of 2026. Like, I don't think they'll stick to a date just yet. That'll probably get announced closer to like 6 months out from the release date. But at CitizenCon, I could definitely see some kind of a release window being given out. All right, so for anybody who hasn't really seen Squadron that much or doesn't know much about it, here's a little look into it. I believe this is Henry Cavill, if I'm not mistaken, the character that he plays, but I have not confirmed that.
This is Krugeri.
Come back, Krugeri.
Redirect to sector 7 Bravo Echo for immediate tasking.
Copy that. On our way.
This game is going to be very cinematic. It's going to be like playing through a movie. It's not going to be your most in-depth space game like Prey or something like that. This will be more like a fancy... Let me think about it. Enjoy. All right, sorry, just had to give you guys that. Yeah, I'm thinking kind of in the vein of Uncharted, Final Fantasy, Hellblade 2. Like this is very much going for a you are in a space opera kind of vibe, and there's plenty of gameplay in there. Don't get me wrong, but I do think this is going to be the kind of game where they're trying to really sell it as cinematic. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as in-depth as Mass Effect. Mass Effect is like a very, very crunchy kind of action-adventure RPG light kind of experience. This is going to be, you got a character customizer, obviously, as they're showing. Customizable voices.
We've been out here so long, I don't know what to pull for anymore. I just wanted to let you know.
There's a lot of dialogue, a lot of relationships with other characters, a lot of optional things that you can come across, like talking with people, learning more about people, all that kind of stuff. They're going to make the spaceship that you are stationed on a living environment that you can always go around and see things happening and take part in things. But it's also going to be relatively narratively driven. So maybe you can do a couple side missions here and there, but like you're in the military, you're on a mission and you're gunning on your missions to go and complete the things that they're ordering you to do. So I think it'll be fairly linear with a lot of room to explore and experience other things. But yeah, lots of celebrities, which is again why they're going to focus a lot on the graphics and the cutscenes and stuff like that. Henry Cavill is, yeah, he's in there.
The thing's a beast. Nimble, too.
12 maneuvering thrusters and 3 mains. It sure sounds like it. Sir.
Captain McLaren, to the bridge. Captain
This is like how they try and rope people into the Star Citizen universe. You play this, you see what the military is like, you get some flashes and some looks at how life is in this lore, in this verse. And then you're like, hey, this is pretty cool. Maybe there's more to this. And you discover there's this whole MMO that kind of also falls in this universe. And this is that single player, very controlled version of short gameplay that's like more action filled and more functionally based around you as the hero than what a lot of people want in the MMO. So this could be what people prefer over Star Citizen.
Combat encounters, but also looking at the feel of how you control your character or vehicle and making sure it's immersive as possible. We've paid extra attention to how your character reacts.
I think the whole calling her Sir thing is just like a sci-fi thing. They do that in sci-fi movies and stuff, and it's sort of a trope.
Or punching the afterburners to get to cover. Ship AI has also seen huge improvements.
How well do I think this game would do compared to Wukong or Space Marine? I don't think this would get close to either of those games. Those have a lot more appeal to a wider audience, I think.
With the aim now on polish, we've organized the project into self-sufficient strike teams, so we can focus on individual areas to deliver the best experience.
Get out of sight. The Cutlass is going to spot you.
This allows us to bring all disciplines together with a unified vision of enhancing the gameplay by seamlessly blending it with polished visuals, final cinematic performances, and our ever-improving technology.
Some people don't discern. People are saying it's Navy. I don't know. I figure you got your reasons.
You didn't see the boat, kid.
you to keep going.
We're also dialing in gameplay features, such as the ship flight model, for both atmosphere and space, which covers master modes, control surfaces, and our gold standard HUD and MFDs.
Give me those MFDs.
Our interaction system for both the world and your character have also seen additional improvements, allowing us to hone and craft environmental.
So they've got kind of puzzles here and there, you know. It's like it's giving a very strong general sci-fi action adventure kind of thing. Spaceflight is not all you're doing, which I think is a good call because spaceflight's cool, but I don't think there's a lot more people who are willing to buy a game that has a lot of FPS segments as opposed to just being in the ship.
The military multi-tool is an essential piece of equipment for every pilot that integrates all attachments into a single handheld device and allows us to create really interesting challenges, including physics-based puzzles using our updated rope tech.
I don't think this game would have to sell like Wukong to be a financial success. I think if they could sell a few million copies of this, that would still do plenty well for them. But ultimately, the reason I was saying this is most important to them is because this is going to bring in a lot of cash for helping to fund Star Citizen, and they need that. They need to lay off a little bit on monetizing Star Citizen, you know? They got to depend on the game they actually launch. What happens if you mess up the physics-based puzzles and yeet the box? I don't know. You end up in Half-Life.
Our scanning, targeting, and marker system has also seen an overhaul, allowing us to highlight only the essential information that you need, such as key objectives, mission targets, and high-level scan information, while keeping your overall view as clean as possible.
This should get I want to see this get a 9 out of 10, to be honest. Everybody's going to take into account the development time. They're not going to get away from that. They've got to nail this, to be honest. One more time, just to make sure you heard me. To be honest, I'm not being dishonest.
Suite of improvements from improved
literally
lifting, weapon feel and balance, realistic scopes, and smoother locomotion, alongside our new and improved FPS
But
radar.
from what I saw in this, if the game systems that are supporting this gameplay work well, this looks like a game that could really sell well, especially if they can get this onto a console.
Which adds a layer of dynamism.
It looks fun, it looks good, as long as the story and the characters are convincing and you know, fun to be around, and the actual story and the writing stands up. I think they could have a good hit with this, but we'll see. I think the thing that sets this apart from Star Citizen, when you think about like the potential of Star Citizen being a success, is that this is built like a traditional game. Star Citizen isn't. This is built with a very particular track through the game environment in mind, so they can just handcraft almost everything in this experience to be exactly what they want it to be. Star Citizen depends so much on systemic stuff, it depends on other players, it depends on just like an MMO environment, whereas this is a single player, purpose-built experience.
As the ultimate vision of the game is realized, allowing us to craft an experience that we can be really proud of. One specific area that I'm excited to dial in is the feeling of the player interacting with the world around them.
Patching you in.
As it's a core component of Squadron.
I highly disagree that SC's funding is not dependent on Squadron. I think they are intertwined very closely.
Physically represented by a character animation to keep you in the moment and fully immerse you in the experience that we've created.
I think they have skills in this game. I think that's why we're seeing them talk about bringing skills into Star Citizen.
Ultimately, This is the final phase of gameplay iteration before we fully transition into optimization and stability on the road to release.
Here's your trail. This is Colton. Come back. Always trips me out to see terraforming setups like this. Web tried explaining how atmosphere processors work. Really shows how far we've come.
What planet? I think this is Odin 2 or Odin 3.
With the transition of Squadron to polish phase, we've had the opportunity to find additional moments within the existing narrative to add subtle interactions where appropriate.
You think SC
It's been
funding is
tremendously
fine?
exciting to play through these areas and find places to augment the mood, support gameplay.
I think the reason that they went so hard on buying multiple studios and increasing their dev team from like 600 to 1200 and beyond over the last 3 years is because they expected Squadron to bring in a pretty hefty amount of cash. Otherwise, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense for them to buy a bunch of studios and expand the team all within just a few years, because they didn't really have anything Star Citizen related that points to a big influx of cash other than selling more ships, which they haven't sped up at all. The only thing I can find in terms of influxes of cash over the last few years from them would have to be either a new game or investors, and they haven't brought on any new investors. So I feel like they are banking on Squadron bringing in some amount of money to help to continue floating the development that they've been working on and cover the costs of their new studios and stuff.
Story and characters.
So yeah, man, I can't believe it. They said I've got to wait another 2 years before I can reapply. So that's why I figured I'd get a job trying in security, because that's you know, I can get some hours flying in the cockpit and whatnot. Can't hurt, right? Exactly.
We've also been capturing pickups for our lead female player character, as well as wildlines for our various enemies that you all will encounter throughout the game on both foot and in your cockpit. These consist of a range of responses and reactions that you as the player can trigger, which has been the culmination of efforts by the gameplay and AI teams. This means that you're going to have to tangle with some very smart and reactive bad guys to complete your mission.
At the heart of this immersive adventure, you'll find cutting-edge cinematic story.
This is crazy. The graphics improvements. I remember watching the vertical slice back in 2018 and thinking, you know what, these look pretty good. Okay, that's cool. And obviously we wouldn't have gotten the same game that they were showing us graphics-wise in 2018, but the improvements that they've done on some of these faces and the lighting and stuff is stupid.
On all of our big action, as well as all smaller character sequences.
I could have pulled this off of the Galactopedia.
Yeah, probably, but I think their solar mass calculations are wrong.
Like what?
Well, this is ridiculous.
What is that?
How so?
I know this is a cinematic, but like, what the heck?
Yeah, probably, but I think...
What? What did you do? I guess it's mostly lighting, I think, but still, it looks like there's a ton of render and texture work going on, and then I guess the background also has a lot more going on that makes the scene look better.
I could have pulled this off of the Galactopedia.
Yeah, probably, but I think their solar mass calculations are wrong, though.
Well, this is ridiculous.
How so?
We are now able to adjust our shot composition to final cameras thanks to recently crafted space vistas and level art being
Wait, hold on.
to final cameras.
I never noticed the original model here just got like this long straight blonde hair and just looks completely goofball. And then they gave her like the hardcore mohawk over here, made her look like an actual pirate. Yeah, this is definitely like early development stuff. This isn't even as good as what they showed us in the vertical slice in 2018, I feel. It just got so much better.
Thanks to recently crafted space vistas and level art being content complete now.
It'd be nice to know how much of a shitstorm we're flying into.
More like a hellstorm, Blue. One you ain't gonna fly out of.
Shut up.
Now, I hadn't seen another ship that wasn't trying to kill me in days, let alone a hauler, let alone a Jean. So you can imagine my surprise.
Detailed lighting passes can be done on hero sequences so we can show our cast and convey their emotions in the best light possible. And we're making sure our cinematics are triggering as fluid as we can craft them, so they form a coherent concerto with the rest of the player's narrative experience.
Mr. Wexler, this
Love
is
how
Lieutenant
just everybody that you see is like a well-known actor. What the hell?
Julian Wexler, I'm the field manager of this little operation. Welcome aboard the Archon. What brings the Navy to this little corner of the universe?
We got you flying with Lieutenant Commander Colton. He's one of our best.
As others will share, this is the most rewarding chapter of development, which allows us to truly experience the visceral and oftentimes emotional moments that our narrative provides.
Again, yeah, most of that background is gray. Like you can see that they just didn't have the lighting kind of stuff going on in here. A lot of improvements to make.
How did you handle it after Vega?
Oh, the sweat and tears tech.
I'm not sure I handled anything. It helps to remember that stuff like this is supposed to hurt.
I've never been good at dealing with problems I can't fix.
Well, this is one that you don't have to do alone.
That's good to know.
For the animation teams,
Yeah, the Henry Cavill reveal is going to be huge. I wonder if they drop that in the first marketing trailer at CitizenCon. That is going to get so many people to pay more attention.
Here we're dialing
He became such a bigger actor since they actually booked him for this too, so I guess that was a good pickup, but I wonder how much more it costs to have him bring in and do his touch-ups.
Let's do this. I have to switch out some of the interchanges on the hangar deck. We're getting a weird airflow.
He was in a previous trailer, but he wasn't recognizable. He was just like barely, he was in a helmet and it was like a 2-second scene. Nobody really recognized him that well. I think they'll have him show up in a scene where people are going to be like, oh my God, is that Henry?
But we still ground the feel in real-world actions, refueling, repairing, and inspecting, and making sure that your next flight mission is a success. This means we're looking out for
So this is what I was talking about. Like you can just be around your ship and watch as it moves and functions. And that's adding to the game. It's not missions, but it's more stuff to experience.
Let's ready some extra ice packs out of storage. Whenever gunners are on full rotation, you can always count on at least one of them getting hurt.
They've been absolutely obsessed with this idea of having every AI on the ship have a life and go about their life and their day and encounter things and do things dynamically to make the ship feel really alive. They love this stuff.
We really want you to feel part of an authentic crew, an important part of the UEE Navy in an enormous universe of people going about their everyday lives.
By the way, if you want to check it out, I have a video on my YouTube channel that compares all of the scenes from this trailer with the older scenes from the vertical or the 2018-2017 video they released. And there's a lot of comparable shots that show kind of how much they've developed it. I'll drop that link in the chat real quick here.
Ready and hold on as you're launched off the deck of the carrier.
Baron 2, you are cleared for launch. Have a safe flight, Baron 2.
That launch is in the video. There's a couple other launches and scenes. I just dropped that in the chat. Bookmark it for later. Check it out. It's good stuff.
Are in that world with you.
I would have never thought a shotgun could be so pretty. Damn, this R97 is sleek as hell. Like a lot of other weapons in Gemini's arsenal, it has a higher rate of fire than most guns of its type.
That talking on MFDs thing is in the game already. It's just very glitchy, but that's how it's supposed to work in Star Citizen too.
We're working to support
some more puzzles, platforming. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of Halo Combat Evolved. Some of the ways that they show it working out.
With objects and the environment.
I don't like the mashing of keyboard keys though. If you've heard my keyboard, you can imagine why.
weapon gameplay and enemy reactions, as well as combat realities, such as weapon malfunctions. Or
Dude, just taking so many shots.
the more lethal kind. Ooh, that's gonna hurt in the morning. As we continue to focus on the quality experience, we've been working closely with our art teams, and it's been exciting to see their environments come to life alongside us.
Owen Wilson.
While animation and design have been populating the locations, polish phase for my teams means making huge advancements in the quality of our characters and environments. We've established our standard with recognizable characters like Mark Hamill, Gillian Anderson, and Gary Oldman. And we're now applying this to the rest of the cast and identifying any remaining tech requirements that need to be closed out.
Wow.
The story of Squadron 42 takes you through a variety of diverse locations of varying scales and styles. We shared glimpses of several environments before, and there's still plenty out there for you.
This is how they're going to get people, man. This game is going to market so hard.
One of the main challenges the art team has had to face during the development of Squadron 42 is ensuring the visuals are complementary to the narrative of the script. The mood and feeling.
Like, you guys remember this scene was in the demo from 2018 or so? The one where they find Trejo's Avenger here. Trejo was the person that they did that before and after shot of. That was crazy with the lighting. So this is her Avenger. And in the demo way back, we saw this part, and it looks entirely different now. And they've done a lot of really, really clear, good updates to a lot of the environments and stuff like that.
Narrative of the script. The mood and feeling of a space is just as important to us as it is making sure we hit the visual quality that CIG has become known for.
No good, we can't hack it from this side. Graves, we got a locked door. Can you give us access?
No, I'm afraid that's a negative, Steve. I would have to add you to our system to give you override permissions, and there's a lot involved in that. It won't happen quickly.
Okay, we'll figure something out.
Everything you see during the campaign has been heavily inspired by the classics of 70s and 80s sci-fi, but with a modern twist. We want everything you see to feel like it has a soul, its own personality, and tells of a history long before you arrived.
Love this music, Jeff.
Crafting interesting flight spaces and their connecting tissue has been one of the more unique challenges we've needed to overcome for Squadron. Developing our VDB tech to blend seamlessly between tighter traversal spaces and into wider space vistas and planets has proved incredibly difficult but rewarding, ensuring that Squadron flows seamlessly from one chapter to the next, without interruption. Creating a diverse array of locations is essential to us. Our environments need to work from a variety of scales. We need to pay close attention to detail, whether we're working in a dirty engineering vent or navigating the debris of a dying star, wondering what may be around that next corner, or even who may live there, how would they have survived, and what state of mind may they be in.
So this is another place where you get a good comparison to what they did last time with the Idris Bridge. Lots more blue, but also just feels a lot more pulled together. Also not placeholder graphics.
Social teams in delivering a cohesive social experience when you're taking some downtime from our refined flight and FPS missions.
So that,
or even missions of the
that is the coil.
Downtime from our
this is a basically one planet smashed into another, I believe, and like vaporized into a cloud of gas. And it's where you spend quite a bit of the game. And this is what we were talking about earlier when we talked about the Nebula and Nyx and how they would use that tech with all of the weird UI effects and stuff. That was in here.
Refined flight and FPS.
Also one of the earlier scenes. This part. This is inside the coil as well.
Developing our VDB tech to blend seamlessly between tighter traversal spaces and into We've worked closely with our social teams in delivering a cohesive social experience when you're taking some downtime from our refined flight and FPS missions, or even missions of the more eerie kind. We'll be introducing new space
and then these space stations look sick.
scale.
Like, what are these ships even?
As tangible as possible.
Look at how many different little assets they've made for Squadron that we've never seen before.
Their age, and try to ensure there's a progression in artistic style with each station as you progress through the game.
Can't get away from the caterpillar though. The one right here.
As you can see today, the teams are working incredibly hard, ramping up the detail.
Hold on, what are you doing over here? Do people actually lean like that? I guess maybe if you're getting real comfy.
And quality to match the breadth of our vision for Squadron 42.
Now I know you're all asking.
All right, now I know you're all ass. Did Chris just call us ass? So that is... Oh, that was funny. That is basically... That's it for Squadron. That's the most up-to-date stuff we've heard. Yeah, he's asking when are you gonna see it?
When can I play it?
When can I play it?
When we have the locked release date, you will be the first to know.
Yeah, so they don't have a launch release date. They didn't have one then. They probably don't have one now. I'm just assuming we're going to get a launch window at CitizenCon. But I mean, it's you can't even you can't even joke that this won't be here. We're gonna put this one at 1,000%. I think that's 10,000%. We'll do it. Squadron 42 will absolutely be at CitizenCon. It will probably be the focus of CitizenCon, and it's likely what the overall reception of CitizenCon will depend on. We all know that the Star Citizen part of CitizenCon is already, how do I say, prematurely disappointing, because like a lot of people recognize that we didn't get a lot of the stuff that was shown at CitizenCon last year by this CitizenCon. Which, you know, if you're new to Star Citizen, might come as a surprise. But no, even with the messaging that they had, I think it was they fell short of what they wanted to deliver this year and fell short of what they should have delivered so far. But besides that, I think that this Squadron 42 is going to be the big thing. Holiday 2026, you think? Holiday 26, you actually believe 2 years from now? Citizen Scott, you believe April next year? I think we could see it next year. I think if they pick anything between like November of next year to May of 2026, then they're going to be competing with Grand Theft Auto. And nobody wants to do that. Doesn't matter what kind of game you are. That's just not fun. I'm hoping 25, end of 25, yeah. I was thinking it would be like first to second quarter of 2025. I do think that they slipped a bit because it's CIG and it's game development, and that's what happens. So I think that second half of 2025 seems fairly realistic to me, and that's what I'm hoping for. But folks, I hope you enjoyed this look at what we can expect at CitizenCon. This was my long, in-depth one. This is a sort of guesses and predictions. We talked about quite a few features in there. Hacking, NICs, player beacons and missions, org MobiGlas app, building interior, StarSim, base building, Planet Tech, Squadron 42. There are other things that I definitely didn't hit that will be there. There are things that we know about that we don't expect that will be there. There are things that we have no clue about that will probably be in there. At the end of the day, I think it'll be an interesting show. You know, you don't have to believe everything that they say. You don't have to expect it to come soon. But ultimately, let's put in Star Citizen 1.0. I think that's going to be a 100% too. We will see something about that because they need to set themselves a long-term plan and a roadmap that people can point towards. But yeah, I think even if this doesn't tell you exactly what's about to happen in Star Citizen, this is going to give you a pretty good idea of their goals, what they have in mind, and the direction of the development for Squadron and Star Citizen, because we have a lot of things that we've known about, that we covered even today, things like building interiors, that we heard about a while ago. StarSim, we heard about a while ago, but until we get an official update on it, we don't know what their thinking is. So if we hear about that at CitizenCon, we can at least expect that that's something that's still in the forefront of their thought and the design of the game, and it's where the game is headed, because things can change year on year with this thing. So I hope that helped with some information for you. Thank you all for coming live, chatting it up, giving me that entertainment. I appreciate it.